Everyone, thank you so much for being here. I'd like to call to order the SLO County WRAC meeting, Water Resources Advisory Committee, for today, Wednesday, June 7th. We'll go ahead and do introductions in a moment, but if you are a voting member here today and want to establish quorum, can you please raise your hand? Plus me, 14. Great, thank you so much, appreciate that. And folks online as well, so thank you all for being here. So I'm Andy Pease. I am on San Luis Obispo City Council, and I'm pleased to be the chair of this organization. Tom is our vice chair over there. And let's go ahead and do introductions. If you could just say your name and what group you are, group or groups you're representing.
All right. My name is David Spiegel. I work for County Public Works and Utilities Department.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental Technology.
Dan Heimerl, Confluence Engineering Solutions.
Andy Eby, Nicola, CSD.
Jim Guthrie, Stephen Roy, Handy.
Linda Chipping, Coastal San Luis Resource Conservation District.
David Chipping, Environment at Large.
Eric Green, also Environmental at Large.
Brent Merchant, SLO County Farm Bureau alternate for Steve Carr.
Laura Lee Waldor, Primary Water.
John Martinez, also primary one.
Brandon Shady,
Okay, thanks.
alternate for Steve. Ray Dienzo, the Treasury CSD.
Thank you.
Tom Berman, District 4.
Tom Brown, RCG.
Jim Rainey, Clean Air Geologist. John Winstead, I applied for the Ag at Large position.
Kelly Warner, City of
Alan Duckworth, 5th District.
Greg Raywall, SLO County Cattlemen's Association.
Joe Style, County Public Works.
Brendan Clark, County Public Works and Committee Secretary.
Yes, I also want to let you all know that my alternate, Dolores Howard, is online, but she can't connect to audio. She can hear us. She believes she's in the Czech Republic, checking out her new granddaughter, and so it's 10:30 at night over there. But she is paying attention, and I want y'all to know that she couldn't speak up for herself today.
Awesome, thank you. See some chats here. Did somebody? Okay, great. Okay, I'm seeing, it seems like Joey's managing the chat there. Thank you for all of that. And let's go ahead and have the folks online introduce themselves. I'll just call you by how I see you on the screen, and then you can say your name and organization. Jeff Edwards.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards. I'm in the private sector land use and planning from Los Osos. And by the way, Madam Chair, the audio for everyone except yourself isn't very good. So I don't know if there's anything or it's on my end, but you come through, but not too many of the others. Thank you.
Great, good feedback. We've got, this usually has been pretty successful, this little catch-all speaker. So we'll see if others are experiencing the same thing. So that was Jeff. Toby.
Yes, good afternoon. Toby Moore. I'm the Water Resources Manager with Golden State Water Company.
Thank you. How's the sound for you, Toby?
Sounds fine for me.
Okay, great. Tim.
I had a problem, but now it has gotten better on the sound. I miss everyone because I like being there and seeing everybody, but I'm on the road, so I'll have to come in as development at large, you know, on the road.
All right. Thanks, Tim. We appreciate you being here anyway. Deborah Logan.
I'm Deborah Logan. Good afternoon. I'm with the Templeton Community Service District, and I would be there, but I'm a little under the weather, so I'm not going to expose the rest of you to my germs today.
Thank you. Right. There are a lot of thank yous chorusing around here. Jenny.
Jenny Williamson, County Public Works. And just a note on the audio, in case, since people may not be aware, the further people are back away from the recording device, the harder it is to hear people. So that's why some people on the remote might have some issues hearing some people. It's just due to distance.
Thank you. So those of you in the back of the room, try to speak up a little for our friends online. Thank you. Let's see, Ron Munns. Ron, we're not hearing you. I don't know if you're on mute. All right, well, holler if you get your sound back, Ron. Otherwise, people, Ron Munns. Tristan.
Hi, I'm Tristan Reaper. I'm also with the Kingery Community Service District as the alternate. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Patricia Wilmore.
Yes, Patricia Wilmore, Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance.
Thank you. And Dolores, who gets the distance award today. Who can't speak. Okay, sorry, picking up on that. Michael Steele.
Hi there, Michael Steele with WC.
Thank you. And I don't know who this is. D. Chisholm. Who's that?
Yeah, this is Dwayne Chisholm. I'm with the San Miguelito Water District.
Great. Let's see, I see Will just joined, maybe. No, that's weird. Oh, yeah. Will Clemens. We're just saying name and organization.
Will Clemens, Oceana CSD.
Great, thank you. All right, did I miss anybody online? Oh, Mark Zimmer, sorry.
Good afternoon, Mark Zimmer, Golden State Water Company.
Great, thank you.
We had 2 walk in,
3
walk in now.
All right, for those who walked in, name and organization, please.
Matt Cook, Golden State Water.
Matt Cook, thank you.
Jamie Anderson, the South Bay Mutual Water Company.
Hey, Jamie. Great, thank you.
I think that brings us to 17.
All right, so 17 voting members in the room and lots of folks listening online. Whew, thanks, everyone. Good stuff. Let's see, so here we go. Next item is a review and approval of the May 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. Any changes, comments, corrections?
Yeah, under item 5, the water conservation, line under 2, 3, and 4 should be the Paseo Municipal Water Company, not the city of Paseo.
All right, noted. Yeah, got it. Okay. All right, any other comments or changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve with those changes. Eric.
I will move approval with that amendment, and they are excellent minutes.
Thank you.
I second.
Christine, I'll second.
And the comment.
And the comment. Voice vote for, yeah. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Abstain. Great, thank you. Okay, next is to receive a presentation from county staff on Lopez Lake. This was kind of by request that we were looking for some updates. Cool. So thank you.
Yeah. My name is David Spiegel. I work for Public Works. I'm in our utilities division. I manage our reservoirs and most of our large water systems for the county. So yeah, so I'm here today. I think there was a little bit of interest in Lopez Lake and how it behaved this last winter. I did a little comparison between this between Lopez and Salinas Reservoir, just as a nice little comparison. I don't think it's too terribly long, but we'll, if you guys have any questions, we can, do it. So it rained. How did the two reservoirs compare this last year? So as you can see, Lopez Reservoir holds 49,000 acre feet. It's got a 66 square mile watershed. Salinas Reservoir, is about half capacity. It's got a much larger watershed, and the soil characteristics of the area up there is we'll see a little later that I'm not a geologist, but it definitely has some different soil, potentials up there. Some background on the two reservoirs. Lopez Reservoir was built in the 60s. It is a DSOD jurisdictional dam, whereas compared to Salinas Reservoir was built in the 40s. It was built by the Army Corps. It was commissioned and built within a year for the war effort. It is still under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps. And feel free to ask any questions along the way if anybody has it. So here's the superficial deposits of the two reservoirs. As you can see to the north, the red circle, that's Salinas Reservoir. On the bottom one, there's Lopez Lake as well. Like I said, I am not a geologist, but there's definitely a different stratification of the soils between the two reservoirs. And over the years, I've been with the county for about 7 years now, and I've seen the kind of the comparisons of how the water actually seeps in and the antecedent moisture, potential of the soils as we get rainfall. So in 2021, kind of coming on the heels of the, kind of coming at the end of the drought before we got all this rain, you can see here's two rainfall, accumulation graphs. So Salinas is on top, Lopez is on the bottom. You can see very much that they received pretty similar, rainfall rates and quantities, upwards of 10 to 12 inches between the two of them. Then you can look at the capacity. So this is definitely, they look very similar. You can see that, coming, through the drought, the soils were very, very dry. The little bit of rain that we did get, it provided very minimal, increase to the reservoir capacities. So then we fast forward to, this last storm season. Once again, you can see that the two reservoirs received very similar, rainfall amounts, but then we can see the difference in the capacity jumps between the two reservoirs. Salinas Reservoir on top, it rebounded very, very quickly. It filled, it spilled, and it maintained that level and is, still spilling to this day. Lopez, you can see it took another, 3 months before it actually started spilling compared to Salinas Reservoir. We've been able to see over the years that it takes, at least with the drought conditions, that Lopez takes somewhere between 9 and 14 inches to really saturate the soil before we actually see any appreciation of, capacity changes in the reservoir. So Salinas is much different than that. As soon as we start to see rain, we start to see, increases in the capacity of the reservoir. Here's the Lopez historic lake levels. As you can see, it was built in 1968. We've got really good data for this one. You'll see on the next slide that Salinas, we don't have it as comprehensive data. It spilled 19 times since 1968. When it was constructed, it filled and spilled within the year that it was constructed. And then it's worth noticing, does this have a little laser pointer on it?
Should.
It's worth noting that back in somewhere around in this period, we actually artificially lowered Lopez Lake. This was for the seismic remediation of the dam. And you can see that after that, it never really recovered after that point, after artificially lowering it. We definitely went beyond the safe yield of the reservoir by doing so. And so you can see that in these two areas, likely here, here, and here, we probably would have spilled an additional 3 times and maybe even come close over here had we not artificially lowered the reservoir.
What does artificially lowering the reservoir look like?
So at the base of the dam, we have 2 10-inch jet valves and a 42-inch knife gate valve. And what we ended up having to do, the DSOD mandated us that we could only hold the reservoir at a certain percentage because of the seismic stability issues. So therefore, we actually lowered the reservoir, released more water downstream to get the water level down to a point that DSOD was comfortable with. So, and I wasn't here obviously during that time, but it was my understanding that they mandated us something well below 50%, and the county said that we wouldn't go. We actually stood our ground and said we wouldn't go below a certain point. So, but it was a safety concern impounding that much water behind the dam, it being non-seismically stable. So.
And then it was upgraded.
It was upgraded, and I believe it was completed in 2005. And then from that point on, it's been, filling at whatever rate it should fill at. So, yeah. And then here's Salinas historic lake levels. We only have data that in Excel that I could provide back to 1987, but you can see it's actually spilled 14 times since, the late 80s. this reservoir, it fills and spills really regularly. We actually had an operator that worked for the county for about almost 40 years, and he pretty much said, if it rains in October, Salinas will fill and spill, without a doubt. And if you go back and look at the data, it pretty much showed on record that if it ever rains in October, Salinas Reservoir is going to fill and spill that year. So we are going to get this quantified and get more data added to this as we have staff available to get the data points in. But it just goes to show that it's a very resilient reservoir. I guess it's worth noting too. So if anybody doesn't know, Salinas Reservoir only provides water to the city of San Luis Obispo. They have the rights to the water. Whereas Lopez Lake, it feeds Rio Grande, Pismo Beach, Avila Beach, Oceano. I know probably even CSA 12. So it feeds a lot more people. So. And then we had the photo, I just wanted to provide some photos of the storm impacts from this last rain season. So this is Salinas Reservoir. This was, I believe, a day after we got all the big rains. I believe this was the 7th or the 8th. It might have been 2 days. As you can see, it's spilling, full width of the spillway. And we actually saw at the highest point, we saw 12 feet of water go over this spillway. It's only happened one other time to be up that high. So how do I get to?
Just hit next.
No, just next. So we utilize drones quite a bit during the storms, specifically for safety reasons. We have done an assessment on the dam since the storm events. It performed very well. Any seepage that you do see is actually pretty natural above, with this amount of water behind the dam.
Super muddy water.
Yeah, that's probably worth noting as well. Anybody that takes water off of the, or drinks any of this water from these reservoirs, you'll notice the water quality was very, very hard to treat. We got some taste and odor issues and complaints down in, you'll see from Lopez Lake. But if you look at the quality of the water at that point and then how much suspended solid was in the water, it was getting really hard to treat. So this is the access road that actually takes us up to the spillway. So this is the Salinas River. And then we have this is the aftermath. So this road still looks like this to this point. We actually have a bid opening tomorrow for this project. So. Here's Lopez. So this is similar time events. So this was around the January like 8th, 9th time period. So you can see how much lower the reservoir was at that point in time, but you can definitely see the amount of junk in the water. The log boom's doing a really good job keeping it away from our intakes. That's the intake structure for the Lopez system. And let's see. I was out there the morning that it spilled. I think I missed the spill by about 30 minutes. But I did get some video and stuff of the spill as well. And anybody that's familiar with the mandated DSOD inspections of our spillways, this one's currently under review. We have done a non-destructive work plan for this, as well as a destructive work plan. So we are working with DSOD currently to get our destructive permits so we can go up and do some core samples. So far right now, it's looking very, very good and very promising. Our under drain system's performing very well. So definitely no concerns for this spillway, comparable to say the Orville, incident. So this was, I believe, taken in February or March. The water quality was starting to things are starting to settle out a little bit by this time. And then for your question earlier, how we artificially lowered it, right there is our 42-inch valve, and then our jet valve sit right there for providing downstream releases. I believe that's all I got. So does anybody have any questions about the two reservoirs? Go ahead.
Relative to Lopez, have you noticed any correlation between the seasons during which cloud seeding was done and seasons when it wasn't? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of variation in the overriding conditions, and you can't seed in absence of storm. But I was just wondering if there is anything resembling actual data on what effect that has.
There is, so we've gone back and we've looked at the historical data and rainfall and storm events that are comparable to what we've seen, over the last few seasons that we have cloud seeded. And it looks like from the data, it does show that the storms that we do seed, we do see an increase in rainfall for those storms.
Have you noticed any decreases in other watersheds? Some people are concerned that you're essentially stealing their water and putting it in your watershed.
So the way, the way the cloud seeding program works is it's very specific to it, and it's a targeted storm system. So what we do is we're actually looking at all the storm conditions, temperature, wind, speeds, all those things. And then we only have a handful of seeding, not even a handful, we only have 2 seeding sites that we use. And those are ground-based sites. And so we did try to use aerial seeding this last season. We did suspend the program on January, I believe it was 2nd or 3rd, prior to these storm events. That was a big hot question as to whether or not we seeded that storm and made it worse. No, we did not. We did suspend the program, and it actually remained suspended for the rest of the season. We didn't cloud seed at all for the rest of the season.
Following up on
Yeah.
Eric's question, you commented that it seems that there may be some increase from that. So are you saying that it's minimal at best?
Well, yeah, so the science behind it, states that you're going to get somewhere between like 8 to 12, maybe 15% increase. And so that's what you're really shooting for. So when you're looking at historical data and especially with the storms in the past, in the seasons that we've seeded in the past, well, it didn't rain much, and I can't seed a cloud that doesn't exist, right? I'm seeding clouds and seeding storms that are already going to be there. All we're trying to do is squeeze a little more water out of them. So quantifying that, it's pretty hard to do. Our consultants do it. I'm going to make the documents available. They'll be on the Zone 3 webpage if you want to read it. I'm definitely not a cloud seeding expert, but I mean, it's a 100-something page document that they've put together and explain, how much they think we increase the rainfall for that season. And to get back to the rest of your question, because it's so targeted, we only seed if we believe the seed is going to nucleate over that watershed. So I don't see a scenario where we could technically be stealing water from, out of the clouds from somebody else. All we're trying to do is give it a way to fall out of the cloud and drop a little more water. I guess you could make the argument that maybe everything past our watershed, maybe we robbed a little water from. That would be a real hard thing to kind of
I don't know how you design
yeah
the protocol for finding out with any certifiability.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
It looked to me like the sediment load on the spill at the Salinas Reservoir was significantly higher than what was happening here at Lopez.
Yeah, I think it had to do predominantly with the height of the spill. So the spill at Lopez ended up, I think, at the largest spill we got over the spillway was maybe 4 inches, 5 inches, something like that over the spillway. So, and the log booms and everything, the suspended particles are probably dropping out before they ever got a chance to get over the spillway at Lopez. Whereas Salinas, we saw 12 feet. So it's that, that upper stratification could have easily gone over with that much sediment.
And it probably could be the 2 graphs that you showed that Salinas fills up very quickly.
Yes.
And this is so much slower to that it allows for the dropping.
Yeah.
And would that also have to do with the different geological kinds of surfaces that the water is coming through or over as it comes off the watershed?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Couple questions. First one, you're using the drones. Are they using drones at all in the live stream agreement? Or are they only using the points or references because that river doesn't flow consistently like it's supposed to with that live stream agreement?
We do not use the drones for the live stream agreement. It's all visual.
The other question is, in 1949 to 1999, for 50 years, Santa Margarita had 200 acre-feet of recharge that was taken away. Do you know where that 200 acre-feet of water went to?
I do not. I don't have enough history here. I've heard that before, but
I have the
not.
documents.
Yeah. So, you know, I'd be happy to receive them if you've got them. Yeah, I don't know enough about it to comment. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Are you changing your long-term modeling strategies at all? Because I noticed the hydrographs, the earlier half is stayed up, and then the big dips during the droughts in the latter half.
Yeah.
So I wondered whether you're looking at the idea of years of intense rain, but much longer years of drought in between is going to change your year-to-year storage.
Yeah, so what we've done, so the Zone 3 contractors have actually just recently adopted a new contract. So back in August, they adopted new contracts that they gave those agencies storage rights. And in that development of that contract, we did an extensive modeling of the reservoir and future, you know, weather projections and things. It does show that we're going to have wetter wets and drier dries. So this might be a new norm as far as the droughts go. However, they still looked at it with the numbers from the safe yield assessment. And I believe I always confuse State Water and Lopez are really close. Is it 8730 or 8370? You might know. For the safe yield is 8730. And so as long as we stay within that 8730 acre feet per year and we don't use more than that, it showed that it should fill and spill more regularly as long as we don't artificially lower it like we did for the seismic.
Really exciting to see all the water in the reservoirs, but somewhat disconcerting to see all the sediment.
Yeah.
Do you know when the last bathymetry studies were done and when we might?
So that's funny you bring that up. So the last one that was done on Lopez was in 2002.
Sorry,
So-
can you explain the
Oh,
term?
sure. So a bathymetric study is one that actually surveys the bottom of the reservoir, and you would use that to determine how much siltation has occurred within the reservoir to see if you're losing capacity within your reservoir. The last one that was done for Lopez was done in 2002. And then the Salinas Reservoir has never had a bathymetric study done. The geologic or the topo that was done or the topography that was done was all for was when it was constructed. So, but the reason I said it's funny you bring that up, I actually have a new staff member that's working for me, and that's something they're looking into right now is the cost of doing bathymetric studies on both reservoirs. So see if we're losing any capacity.
Future WRAC.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, you must have I know at the city, we have a siltation assumption some loss of capacity.
Yeah, and I don't know
assumed in
what
our
that,
modeling.
that percentage is that the other previous staff before me have kind of considered. However, the one thing I do know is we've been doing a lot of intake inspections and things like that on the intakes at the bottom of the reservoir to make sure they're in good condition as part of all these assessments that the state's requiring, or that we just want to make sure that these things are in good shape as well. The seventh valve on the intake structure for Lopez, which sits, the intake structure sits right over here. The lowest one at the bottom was always was believed to be silted in, and we actually put a little ROV down there and looked at it, and it was not silted in. So it gave us some hope that it's not as silted up as we believe it to be.
All right.
I know, right?
Eileen.
Yes.
I'm like concerned of like the wetter years. Are you gonna be artificial, are you gonna need some more water? Because it's like goes down to Oceana and it just like.
Yeah, I was on the levee this year doing, nighttime patrols and things. So I'm well aware of how bad, it got down there. Right now, that's gonna have to be an upper management policy that needs to come through. Lopez is not a flood control reservoir. It was not designed to be a flood control reservoir. And so to artificially lower it or say, let more water out to build, some flood storage in there, it was never meant to be that. And so we're actually looking at that right now. We've had some concerns by the South County Sanitation District about, what happens if we go into this next season, the reservoir is still sitting at 95%. and we get a big storm like we did, back in January. So it is a concern. It's something we're looking at, but right now it was never meant to be that. So we don't have any policies or procedures around, letting any water out ahead of a storm season. So.
Yeah.
The question's kind of subject of these two things, but I was on 166 recently and doing the Twitchell reservoir, and I can't believe what role do we have in that reservoir as far as water rights or
The county does not.
So, and that's about Twitchell, is that what
Yeah.
you said?
Yeah, that's Santa Barbara, county, and so we don't have any water, right? The county doesn't hold any water right to that water.
but it's on the same list now, it's over the county.
Yeah, I know, and it's not like Nassau Meadow where, Monterey, has a water right to that water. We don't, from what I understand, we don't have any water rights to that water.
Yeah, it's a lot of water
Yeah,
on the same list, so.
yeah,
Good to see.
yeah, yeah. It made my job easier. Everyone was looking at me going, what are we gonna do if the reservoir goes dry? So.
If you're online and have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand. I can recognize you. Yeah, and we'll try to repeat the questions for when we can't hear them very well.
Any other questions?
Any?
Jeff has his hand raised.
So.
Sorry, did not see. Jeff.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jeff Edwards, and back to the question of Lopez and the dam and the management of the releases. If Lopez is primarily a water resource and storage facility, I'm curious why releases continued well past January 1st of 23, when there was quite a substantial capacity that to store additional water. Instead, the water was released, and in fact, on January 9th, as everyone knows, the levee was breached and the flooding ensued. So I guess my question really is, why wasn't more water being stored during the month of January, and early January in particular?
Yeah, so I fielded a lot of phone calls over this one during that time. So right now, we operate the reservoir under what's called the interim downstream release schedule. And that is because we do not have an approved habitat conservation plan by the state, which would dictate how we release water out of that reservoir. It would be part of our water right permit. And we are currently in the process of developing a habitat conservation plan. And actually, it's been in the works for about 10 or 15 years now. However, under that interim downstream release schedule, it dictates how we release water downstream for environmental reasons. And that document is what guided us for those downstream releases, even during storm events. And so the problem that we see up at Lopez here is that the Lopez watershed, definitely below the dam, is very, very small. And we will see, even though it's pouring down rain, the minute we shut off our downstream release, you will start to see the creek dry up at the base of the dam. There's just not a large watershed there, and it just doesn't capture a lot. And I believe from the groundwater modeling, I believe there's a good alluvium layer. I mean, that essentially spearheaded the seismic retrofit. It's all gravelly. It contributes to the liquefaction potential. So there's a lot of reasons, but at the end of the day, it's that. They call it the IDRIS, the interim downstream release schedule. That's what dictates. So,
okay, if I may, Madam Chair, a follow-up. It appears that the releases were virtually 100%. Wouldn't something less than that be acceptable and compliant with the interim downstream release schedule? And just to add on, the HCP and the state permit have been pending for 25 plus years, if I recall correctly.
You're correct. Yes.
So, I mean, it doesn't appear as if there's an immediate resolution of this question.
Well, so it's a little deceiving when you drive by the base of the dam. The jet valves look pretty intimidating by how much water is being released. We were actually at the minimum flow that we could release. So we were releasing, I believe it was 1.9 CFS or 2 million gallons per day. And that is the minimum flow that we can release out of the dam. So, and we held that minimum release for as long as we possibly could, until we started to see, creek conditions and things change. I think we haven't ramped up until actually the last couple of weeks that we've started to ramp back up in flows.
Well, finally, I'll just add that I'm not sure what number we're on, but maybe the 7th or 8th atmospheric river of 13. And I would just think that there would be some management discretion available. So the levee, which by the way, cost the most recent improvements under the waterway management plan cost over $12 million. Much of that has been washed away. That's unfortunate.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yep, noted.
And so, and just for, the public's information here too, it's the Habitat Conservation Plan. Monterey County has a very good one for Nacimiento and San Antonio. It talks about wet years, dry years, wet, dry years, dry years, all those things. And then it dictates how you release water out of that reservoir. It's very well put together. We're going to be developing a very similar, plan for Zone 3 or Lopez. We just haven't gotten there yet. It is actually gaining traction. So I know Jeff said that, it's been 20 years in the making, but I can definitely tell you within the last about 3 years, the modeling is really starting to come together. The water modeling portion of it, because of Sigma and the GSAs, has really come together. So I feel like in the next year or two, we should probably have a pretty good tentative plan put together.
All right, we're going to move on. Eric, last question.
Will this habitat conservation plan cover all the way to the mouth? Because there was a previous one that stopped short.
So
and we've had a request to repeat the question because they can't quite hear.
Oh, right. Can you say that?
No,
again?
no, you.
Oh, yeah,
If we repeat the question as you answer it.
What was your question again?
Will the habitat conservation go all the way to the mouth of Arroyo Grande? Because there was a previous HCP that stopped a couple of miles short.
Correct. Okay, so will the HCP be, will it look at all the way to the mouth, to where it reaches to the ocean?
For the habitat.
For the habitat conservation plan.
Okay, thank you.
So to answer that question, so our, what do they call it? The monitoring point that we're looking at will actually be the AG gauge, which is in the middle of downtown Arroyo Grande. That's where we would like to measure flows. And so we will provide releases out of the dam and then also monitor that location. And I believe it will end up being a model where it's kind of similar to the Salinas release schedule or the live stream agreement, is that we will check multiple locations for flow based on a certain.
The Tidewater, Gobi, and the Pacific Steelhead depend on the conditions at the mouth. The lagoon just upstream.
Right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Super informative, very helpful for our group.
Yep.
Great, thanks. Don't usually applaud around here.
Thanks, David.
Yeah. Anybody has any questions, or Brandon or Jordan, if you guys want an email address, I'm happy to send you any data or documents, anything you guys need. So
Okay.
thank you.
All right, and then our next item, happy to have the in-house expertise on the, it's a received presentation from and provide feedback to the county staff on the master water report update, which Brendan's in charge of anyway. So Brendan.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everyone. Glad to be here. I think the last presentation was in November, so I've got a number of updates and things to share. A lot of which, frankly, we as staff just got a few weeks ago. So pretty new stuff to share. Today, I'm going to do just a quick background of the project, a little refresher, the goals and the components of the project, go through a summary of what we've been doing, kind of our first task, the data information audit, provide some summary from that. Go through the development steps of the data and information management system, the first of which is the proof of concept, which I have some of that to share with you today, and then go through the next steps. So first off, just real basic, the project itself, the last iteration of the master water report was completed in 2012, and really the data only went up to 2009. So in these last 12, 13 plus years, There've been a number of significant water supply and demand advancements and data produced and regulations. Some are just a few listed here. Obviously, with Sigma, multiple iterations of urban water management planning, which gets into drought planning and climate change planning. Those are updated. GSPs, urban water management plans are updated every 5 years. And then now those also have annual reports. So there is a trove of data available that covers most of the residents in the county. And so, really the 2012 report is out of date. And what we're looking to do is automate that. So create a system, we're calling it, the data and information management system, the master water report. So when this new data is available, we can plug it in and continue to have an accurate picture of what's going on in the county from a water supply and demand standpoint, with the purpose of informing the public and informing the decision makers, the Board of Supervisors, LAFCO, others, because the clearest picture of water will help, I think, make the best decisions. So our project components. Oh, first I do want to mention, just a reminder, our project team, our lead consultant is Carollo Engineers, and their team includes Dan, Confluence Engineering Solutions, and GSI and Stillwater Sciences. So obviously we have project management, and then we have stakeholder outreach, which is kind of multi-pronged. There's public outreach, part of which includes coming to you regularly. I think this is the 4th presentation to the group, and also the internal stakeholders to the county and other agencies who know are depending on us for this data, and that is going to inform the data information audit component, our analysis and selection of the data and information management system, the development of that system, and the reporting tools therein, which will become the master water report update. And then we'll also, the plan is have an operations model as well. We'll be able to do some scenario planning and things like that. So where are we at? We are kind of in 4 and 5. Those are kind of running simultaneously. So we have, I would say, majorly completed our data and information audit. We think we have enough to move forward, and I'll go through a summary of that here in a little bit. And so we are working through how we're going to design this data and information management system. When I say design, I mean the software, the logic, how are the calculations going to work? How do the GIS layers work? How is Carollo going to develop this system so the county can then host and maintain it? Those types of questions, while working toward the actual development of the project.
So is DIMS the data information management system?
Yes, so the DIMS is how we're going to aggregate all of the various types of data, which I'll go through here in a little bit, to produce a master water report, supply and demand pictures at various scales. So I have a little bit more information on that here in a second. So what did we hear in the data and information audit? There are a number of county departments and countywide agencies who are looking to us, Public Works, Water Resources Division, for the picture of water, to be the experts, to have that comprehensive understanding of what's going on. So when they want to do something with water, they want to come to us for that picture. And so this includes obviously our master water report itself that we manage. This includes resource summary reports for the county planning department, the community plans that county planning does, our groundwater basin reports, the groundwater sustainability department is managing now, municipal service reviews for LAFCO, and SLOCOG housing, regional housing and infrastructure plan is just kind of put it up as an example. These, the types of plans and the types of studies that are being done by other departments that are, want to look to us for water. They don't want to have to do that themselves. That's not their area of expertise. It's supposed to be ours. And so mentioned the different types of data we're looking at aggregating in a system like this, and there's kind of comes out to be 3 different types of data. You have your GIS or your mapped data, boundaries, acreages, and things like that. And even within there, you have various local data, you have even federal data, and you have countywide data, you have state data, just in there in the mapping area. You have tabular data, so basic tables, years with different values in them, and time series data. So this, obviously data that's regularly being monitored and collected over time. And so these are the types of data. Again, this is not a comprehensive list, but kind of the main, kind of the main stuff, if you will, that we're looking at integrating together. So what we heard was, okay, with that data, there's different ways of looking at it and different ways we want to be able to view, and I'll use this term and aggregate that data at various geographic scales. Obviously, we have one county. In our water planning, we have defined, and I have a picture of it, 6 water planning areas, which could be further broken down into 25 watersheds. And within those watersheds and water planning areas, there are a number of communities. And I'll also define what I mean by community here in a moment as well. All right, and with that data as well, there's past data, there's current data, there's projections. I mentioned some of these plans that the state requires, GSPs, urban water management plans, require 5-year look aheads. And then you have this kind of build out based on whatever adopted general plans, community plans there are. So these are different time increments. We want to look at the data. And there are different types of key results as well. So obviously there's just the numbers, the supply and demand. Then there's the different ways of looking at that supply and demand by various types, sectors, or the sources themselves. We get a question like, well, how much groundwater do we use? Couldn't answer it right now, to be honest. And so being able to have that type of data is going to be helpful again for board of supervisors, for different boards of directors, to make decisions and to have the clearest understanding of what's going on. And then we know there are catalysts for change. And so, like I said, our last master water report, printed it out, it's done. It can't adjust to any changes. So the types of changes we're trying to build into this software and this program to be able to handle changes in demands due to land use development, things like that, changes in supply or demand due to projects. So how we know, can I pick on City of Morro Bay is working on their indirect potable reuse project. How does Morro Bay include that project in forecasted demand? When do you assume that that project is going to be built, and how much water? How do you show that? These are the types of questions we're trying to answer. I don't have an answer to that right now. That's what we're working on. We know that there's future supply conditions, i.e. climate change. How is that going to affect our reservoirs? We just heard David talk about they're updating and modeling, based on wetter wets, drier dries, things like that. There's changes in growth. Some areas have a growth assumption right now, some don't. Well, those can change by an act of the board or of whoever the land use agency is. How do we anticipate that? And then, similarly, some areas have restrictions. Could those change? Or some areas that don't have restrictions in the future have new restrictions. So these are the types of things that we heard in our data information audit. Some of what from the public and some from our, again, internal stakeholder group with various departments from the county and LAFCO and SLOCOG as well. So real quick, I know it's a little hard to see. These orange lines are the delineation of the water planning areas. Just wanted to note, so this is essentially the ridge here. I think it's the San Lucia Mountains. And so our water planning areas are aligned directly with the watersheds. So there's no water, crossing in here. So our 3 coastal water planning areas, all drain to the coast. Obviously, everything that drains to the Salinas River, that's a big water planning area. And then we have, Cuyama water planning area and Carrizo Plain as well. All right, so that's some of what we learned in the audit. And now we are in the development phase of the data and information management system. And that first step here is the proof of concept. And we have kind of put the project in 2 phases. The first phase is slated to end in about a year as part, and that aligns with a grant deliverable that we have. And then phase 2 will be the production version. and I have a little bit more details on what we're doing here coming up. So I mentioned we just got some images and some first thoughts, first looks at what the proof of concept could look like. And so this is what, kind of first draft that Corollo shared with us that we're talking through, what is it? We'll have a data library. So I mentioned the different types of data we have. We have GIS data, time series data, tabular data. This is intended to be a public project, publicly available project. So, anyone would be able to come in and see, the data that we're aggregating is public data. It's just all over the place. It's not in one place. And that's what we're trying to change. And so be able to look at different, mapping tools, just different ways of viewing and interacting the data. Yes, sir.
In future conditions, which you had in one of the blocks, we've got Sigma kicking in 2040. You have maybe 2-year look aheads. Are you going to have any performance, red light, green light, orange light type situations to monitor progress towards required goals during this time? Because what will you be doing about Paso Robles groundwater, for example? Is that going to be left to the Sigma guys who took out more water last year than ever with an approved plan? How is that going to be handled? Would it be you guys doing an update saying, whoa, you're taking too much, or is it somebody else doing it?
So I think the answer to your question will be no, that's not going to be us. So we're going to aggregate the data and then provide that to to the public, but also, that is a, specifically that basin, is managed under the groundwater sustainability plan and the GSA partners there. And, if you like the red, yellow, green light thing, it sounds kind of like the resource summary reports and what planning department was doing. If the planning department wants to continue doing that, our goal is to be able to provide them the water data for them to make that decision, that whatever metrics they want to use that separate green from red, or from category 1 to 2 to 3, or the level severity, however they want to do those definitions, those aren't our definitions to manage, and that's not the goal, but to provide the data so everyone can go look at what does it look like when you add in the GSP on top of the areas outside and the annual report data, and just let it be there. But making judgments or taking that next step, that's not our role. So I'm going to keep
more
going.
Master water inventory than a master water plan, because David seems to be asking for it to be used as a plan.
And others can use it that way, but it's a report. So in continuing with the proof of concept, so we have more than screenshots. The development of the data and information management system, we're going to focus in on water planning area 2, and then more specifically the Morro Bay watershed of water planning area 2. And the reason why we're doing that, as I mentioned, all these different types of data and the different ways and different problems we're trying to solve in viewing the data. The Morro Bay watershed hits almost all of those. So we're going to be able to get a watershed look, a community look, existing. There is an urban water provider in the watershed, and we're going to be able to get multiple different types and sources. And what I mean by that is this is just one way of looking at the data. It's kind of a Russian doll approach, but you have water planning area 2, which includes multiple watersheds. You have Morro Bay watershed, you have like the coastal Irish Hills watershed, and you have Whale Rock and the watershed that's up there by Cayucas. So multiple watersheds make water planning area 2. And within Morro Bay watershed, you have a number of planning areas, like our county operations center, which includes obviously the National Guard base, the state prison, Cuesta, a number of county entities. There's just a large kind of mini, I don't get in trouble, mini city there basically, but they are all connected from a water supply standpoint. You have the Morro Bay sphere of influence area, which obviously includes the city, and then some other non-city zones that are part of that sphere. And then you have Los Osos, which actually fits together fairly nicely. You have the basin plan area, and then within that you have your Los Osos URL, and within that you have your water serving entities. So again, this is why water planning area 2 is our guinea pig. Within here, you have your small purveyor managed basins. You have your large urban water suppliers. There's actually an unmanaged basin area with the Morrow watershed. And then obviously we have rural and ag use all within there as well. So this is how we're looking at it. And the kind of first look at how this data could be viewed based in the different categories, the geographic types and the different time series available. You know, you could look by watershed or by total water planning area and look at different years and, you know, get the picture. Now, this is similar, if you're familiar with the 2012 Master Water Report, there are a number of charts that look just like this. And so that's what we're trying to recreate in an automatic system. Mentioned here or noted here on the right, there's additional information. So these are, you know, kind of offshoot type reports that we're trying to put together. The resiliency risk scores, I won't go into a ton of detail here right now. Did a presentation on that a few years ago. This was a study that county staff did of looking at how resilient or vulnerable are 40 of the largest water systems in the county to different, like how vulnerable was their water supply? Were they only, how many sources of water did they have? What are the vulnerabilities for those sources? So groundwater has certain vulnerabilities compared to state water, compared to local reservoirs, and kind of did an analysis on that. And so that's something we're going to continue with this master water report and expand to all the water systems that are included. And there is a state regulation involved with that, but again, I'm not going to totally go down that. And then we have, you know, looking at environmental demand. One of the kind of self-reflections of the 2012 Master Water Report is it knew it didn't do a really great job with environmental demand, and partly because, you know, looking at water supply as an acre feet per year thing, that doesn't really work with environmental demand because it's on a curve. And so we've been kind of trying to play around with how we could do environmental demand, you know, because really throughout the year, as you'd imagine on a wild stream, winter and spring, you have more flow, and then summer and fall, there's less flow. So we've been working, Corolla's been working with Stillwater Sciences and perhaps reporting on environmental demand in a wet, dry kind of look to try to get some of that, you know, how it's on a curve. It's not really like a 3,000 acre feet, you know, doesn't quite work like that. So that's something we're working through as well, wanted to share. So that's what we have for the proof of concept. And I want to just pull the curtain back just a little and show these are the things we're actively discussing, and how, you know, problems that are just not yet solved. You know, how are we going to do climate change, or what do we want to do with climate change? You know, some of the urban water suppliers, you know, they have to do certain, you know, types of analysis. Do we just kind of report on that, or do we do something else? How are we going to handle SB 552? That is requires counties to do drought planning for small water systems. So part of that is the resiliency scores that we're doing, but there's a lot of other reporting involved. How far does this master water report meet SB 552 or not? That's something we're working on. How are we going to incorporate projects like I mentioned earlier? How are we going to do unmanaged basins? The supply and demand there, you know, there's a lot of unmanaged basins now. Obviously, there's not as many people there, but unmanaged basins just have less, you know, information. So perhaps the last study done on a certain watershed, like say Toro Creek, was 40 years ago, but there's no active management. There's no reason to. So how do we handle those types of situations? That's something we're working on. When it comes to evapotranspiration and transpiration, there's kind of two different types of data sets available. There's satellites that go around, you know, very regularly. And DWR provides some of that annually, or we could do our own contract. So that's very accurate for a specific location for that specific year. But is it really great for long-term looks? Maybe that's where perhaps you'd want to use the CIMIS, which is less geographically located, but has a more long-term look because it's averaged out. Stations like Cal Poly have been around for so long. You have a really long, really accurate long-term average there. How are we going to do population? I mentioned like we are the managers of water data. Who is the manager of population? That's a question. Or is it SLOCOG? Is it the census? Is it we haven't answered that one yet. And then, like I mentioned, environmental flow. We're working on that. How can we set up the system where as more information is available from in-stream flow studies or different things? How could we maybe have a template or be able to put that data into what we have so it becomes readily available? And then just what other reports do we want to do and include as well? So that's let's see here. Last slide. Where are we at? So we're kind of moving from proof of concept. Take any kind of comments on that here today or in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be moving toward a prototype version, which is expected to be late fall. And we have discussed bringing that here to WRAC late fall and we'll have some limited demonstratable capability is the goal. And then spring 2024, April is we need to have a working development version of certain reporting tools to meet a grant deliverable. And then we're kind of off to the races with the rest of the project. So again, we're using, to be really clear, we're using Water Planning Area 2 as the guinea pig to build out functionality. So we're trying to have a lot of functionality with Water Planning Area 2. And then in phase 2 of the project, we'll apply that to the rest of the county. So rather than limited functionality for the whole county, we're going to go for more functionality in a smaller part. And that's what I wanted to provide as an update today. I'd be happy to take some questions and answer what I can. And otherwise, I'll write it down and we'll go from there.
So the timing of the production version, so we kind of do the spring 2024, is that also then launched right to the kind of the whole county wide?
Yeah, I think I could
spring,
see
summer?
us, we're kind of, we're working toward the specific grant deliverable. I could see us hanging out in the development version for a while once that deliverable is met and really fine tuning what we've done in Water Planning Area 2 before launching off to the rest of the county. So I kind of see it as maybe we'll make a little pit stop or something, meet that deliverable, and then, okay, really regroup and plan out how we're doing the rest of the county. Because frankly, like I showed what I call the Russian doll chart, other parts of the county don't fit as well, like the URL and on the Napoma Mesa, there's multiple URLs that don't align over the basin. So it's like, okay, how do we want to aggregate the data there or provide aggregation there? Those are things we're trying to figure out.
Nice. Questions, comments?
Yes, sir.
Who's in charge of updating the CAD?
I believe that is the groundwater sustainability and the GSP, GSA is that realm.
Back in 17, when it started, I wasn't able to answer it. When Tascadero subbasin was separated by the PWR, that took away a population of 33,000 people, which should have changed the CAD number. It also took away a lot of use. And at the same time, Nascimento came online, state water turnout was built, and other ways of getting certain amounts of water were developed, and none of that information has been updated. So that's 5 years ago.
Are there comments, questions online, anyone? All right, as we have talked about, this is my favorite project because I just think for us to be able to understand our water ongoing basis. And I think you mentioned in kind of the early slide that outreach with the housing SLOCOG and the housing infrastructure plan, and they are looking at housing. Where does housing make the most sense throughout the county? We're trying to have kind of coordinated effort, because the state always says like, hey, you have to have so many units of housing. And then we divide it up over the county internally. But now it's being informed not only by transportation, but also by water and wastewater systems. And so I appreciate that you've been working on that. I don't know if you have any comments or feedback, but on how that process.
We're working in parallel right now. So
Yeah.
trying to find that meeting point.
Yeah, so a little ways out. Awesome. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Okay, so let's see, we got some other kind of cleanup items here. Receive an update from the ad hoc committee on bylaws. Our committee met again. We made a few more decisions in terms of what we recommend. Some of them were not unanimous, and we decided that, and there were still some big items. So we decided to not try to rush it to this meeting. We're going to work again over the summer, bring it back in the fall, and for committee consideration. So I think that's kind of the high points. Anything else anybody on the committee wants to add? Right. Okay. So bylaws. Okay, so now membership, working within our the bylaws that we do have. We've had an item 6 here about membership, and the item is to consider endorsing ag at-large application of John Winstead, who is here in the room, and also to review at-large membership vision. So we'll go ahead and start with the application. If John wants to maybe introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. My name is John Winstead. I've been a resident of San Luis Obispo County for 20 years. Been in the wine industry and vineyards for about 30 years. Served on the board of the PRWCA as well as the vineyard team for 5 years. Coached youth sports for probably a dozen years in sports, so enjoyed being involved with helping out in communities. Voted to the committee.
Great, thank you. Any questions for John? As a reminder, our role here would be to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and they would make the final appointments. And it is specific in the in our current bylaws that we let's see, applicants must be engaged in production agriculture is the current wording. It's pretty narrow. We're talking about in the fall when we look at the bring bylaws back, that maybe we expand that to be involved in agriculture, the business of agriculture. So instead of just the production, but in this case, John clearly qualifies under the current bylaws. So that's the one that we're bringing forward. All right. Questions or comments? Yeah, Brent.
We accept and endorse his application.
Excellent, thank you.
Second, and I'm particularly glad to see that he has objective experience on and in the Paso Robles Basin.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to make that recommendation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So John, next meeting and then the official next WRAC we take June and no, we take July and August off. So our next meeting will be September.
Yeah, you should have it in place by then.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. Okay, and then the next part is not an action item unless somebody wants to comment, but it is just kind of impacting, and it's on the page 14 of the agenda. And it's on the screen. Thank you. On the agenda packet. And the idea here is I didn't really know this existed, but Brendan brought it up that we have this membership vision. It's a little bit of kind of values and qualifications, but also specific organizations to outreach to. And we do have openings. We're actually getting a little closer here, but openings come up all the time. So now we have one of the 2 at large, and we still don't have the alternates and environmental at large. I think we're still down. for an alternate for Eric. So I think part of the question here, or not the question, but just there's the list for the end of this document, which is groups to outreach to, and we noticed that there were maybe a couple that were out of date. So I think unless somebody has something right now that they want to make a comment on, I would encourage folks to, one, if you have ties, to reach out to these folks when openings happen, but also if you know of updates, like Slow Green Build is now Central Coast Green Building Council, and things like that. Eric.
Yeah, we could add the Slow Beaver Brigade to the list.
Slow Beaver Brigade, absolutely. And the salmon enhancement isn't salmon enhancement
Yeah, it's
anymore.
Creeklands.
Yeah, Creeklands.
I mean, I could take comments until the next meeting and we could look at it again if we wanted.
Yeah.
With the bylaw or date or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
If anyone wants to take a look at it outside the meetings, you can email Andy and I.
Yeah, with your comments, and we'll do an update. Brent.
Just, I believe the Slow Vendors Association is now Slow Coast Wine Collective.
Great, thank you. Christine.
Yep, Sierra Club up there, we could add Eco Slow, it's been around.
Oh, yeah.
a long
Funny
time.
that wouldn't be on there.
They're on the list.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, it was up further. I was looking
Oh, and
at
they
it.
spell out their whole name,
Yeah,
but yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Okay. All right, any other comments or discussion on this document? So more provided for our awareness and potential updates. Okay, online, anyone? Okay. So next item, this was a request from our members to, because we take July and August off, there's an item that could occur over the summer. So the item is consider forming an ad hoc subcommittee to review and comment on the water-related sections of the Dana Reserve projects EIR, which I think comes out soon. Linda Chipping, would you mind kind of introducing why you were interested in this item? Speak loudly so folks can
Okay,
hear.
I requested that this be considered by our group because the EIR has been delayed and delayed and delayed. And I would feel bad if it came out while we were on hiatus for the summer. This committee has looked at significant projects and development projects in the past, and there have not been any on our docket in several years. And it seemed to me it would be regrettable if we didn't have a structure in place that we could have an ad hoc committee move forward with this. The only other option, it seems to me, that is if it were to come up while we were on hiatus, that members might ask for a special meeting of the WRAC, and I felt like that was a lot of wasted time and effort, and a lot of people would be on summer breaks. So that's why.
All right, so discussion, Eric.
I'm supportive of the concept. The question is, in the past, well, I guess I will start with, it doesn't matter whether comments come from an individual or an organization or from whom they come in relation to the obligation of the preparers of the final EIR to take them into account and fully respond to them. The source of the comments doesn't matter, but obviously when it comes to essentially the standing of commenters who have made a difference, it does matter. To have the imprimatur of the Water Resources Advisory Committee would seem to require a process that somehow pulls us together to make them the comments of the whole group and not just an ad hoc group. It could be that we could move to, maybe this is what Linda's talking about, to empower an ad hoc committee to define themselves clearly as not the whole RAC, but as interested members of the RAC. And make comments as a group, and that might, but I think it needs to be made very clear, if we don't meet over the summer, that these are not of the same status as formal RAC comments unless all of us have a chance to vote on it.
Right, okay, so so I'm just summarizing points for those online briefly and making sure that we're all on the same page. So ad hoc subcommittee could, it depend, we don't even know when this is coming out at this point, right? So, but we could form a subcommittee now, ad hoc, and then to Eric's point, that group, they could either be commenting as individuals, they could comment as the ad hoc review committee, or it could be that the timing aligns with bringing it back to RAC as a whole. Am I, okay, Ed? And then
I
Christine.
noticed the next scheduled meeting for the RAC is September 6th. This item is coming before the Planning Commission on October 31st and September 1st, a 2-day session on this item.
Did you say October and September, or
So-
October and November?
August 31st
Oh,
and September 1st, it will be before the Planning Commission.
Okay, and is that, so that's kind of a public presentation of the EIR, or is it
The
to?
Planning Commission is going to review the project, comment on or recommend certification of the EIR
Oh, okay,
to
so
the Board of
it's,
Supervisors. And I don't know when the supervisor takes it up, maybe a month later.
well, it would have to be appealed. Are they planning any study session in advance of taking action? Usually when there's a large consequential project like that, they try to have a study session at which there may be gaps in the information that they want brought forth before they make a decision.
The only schedule I know is August 31st, September 1st.
is a hearing to, yeah,
It's a hearing, and that'll be
it's a double meeting.
their final hearing, Planning Commission final hearing,
Mhm,
before it goes to the Board of Supervisors.
okay,
The EIR has been out since summer of last year, and comments to the EIR were closed within 30 days of that, so that those comments are in. So I don't know where you go from here.
We're waiting the final.
so did it go back and it's gonna be,
It
the
went
final will be recirculated type of
The
thing, is that what's
comments
going
went
on?
back to the county, and the comments are being addressed over this
Gotcha.
long period. 10 days, no more than 10 days before the August 31st, the response to the comments will go back to the commenters. And they will have a chance to comment on the comments. But on August 31st, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you for that information. Christine, you've had your
Yeah,
hand
I'm
up.
still confused about this. When do you expect the final EIR to be available to the public?
It would be at that meeting.
At the meeting, it
Because
would be
they will.
released then?
Or 10
At
days
that
before
meeting-
that meeting.
At that meeting, the comments to the EIR will have been addressed and will be presented. All the comments to the EIR will be addressed at that meeting.
So it might not be,
So that will be the final EIR when the comments are addressed. That's the final EIR that will then
That's
be
that's the way it's scheduled.
discussed as scheduled. out then.
so when,
Jim has.
yeah,
So did the RAC comment on the draft?
No.
I don't believe so.
yeah, we might have missed that window then.
It might, that would have been a stretch, I think, for the purpose of it as well.
All right, so Eric,
I continue to support the thoughts behind Linda's request, but under the circumstances, it appears there would be very little opportunity for collective action. One suggestion I would make as individuals is that perhaps we communicate with the chair and the members of the planning commission and the planning department our hope that rather than have a decision-making meeting on a project in an EIR that has basically just hit the street, that they schedule a study session and assess for themselves whether they need more information before they actually schedule the decision-making hearing. I think that's a reasonable request. Again, there's nothing we can do as an organization on this, but I would suggest that it is individuals, not speaking for the WRAC. I think we actually multiply our power if we don't all mention the same organization when we're making that request. But I would just encourage members and others in the body politic to make that request.
Linda.
I see great value in having members of the WRAC coming together to discuss it. There is always, in my past experiences, people make comments that then jog other memories and jog other ideas. And I think that having an ad hoc committee to look at the final EIR would be beneficial.
Okay, well, I mean, if you still think there's value, then let's, you know, there maybe need to clarify the communication, but it sounds like there are folks that are interested in meeting. Christine.
My thought was kind of the same thing. And I'm discouraged that this wasn't agendized for us back when the EIR was out. We had more opportunity to think about this as we used to do when big projects came forward in the county. We were more hip to these things ahead of time and we would look at these EIRs. In this case, though, I think that it would, I agree that there would be some value in this summer's review of all of this by an ad hoc committee. Even if we meet after the first August meeting, at the end of August and September, we could discuss things and still have some input if we wanted to as a group. But I think we could all be educated by having an ad hoc committee review this in the summer and present to us so that we know what we were missing out on, what we haven't seen. We're not all going to read the EIR, we're not all going to comment on it, but an ad hoc committee could succinctly tell us what we missed out on, and we might then have an opportunity to make a succinct comment for the September meeting of the Planning Commission.
It was a final EIR that we opined on for Letitia many years ago.
And made a big difference.
Directly to the board, I believe,
Directly
not
to
to
the
the
board,
planning
and
commission. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
And
okay.
the board won't see it until probably October. So yes, we could make a difference.
I think we can make a difference by having the ad hoc committee, but there are people who are already interested in being on that committee. Let's have them do it.
All right.
I think the conversation, and Linda has made a very strong case for the value of the conversation. So I can see kind of two facets to this. One is the conversation shortly after the final EIR is out with time to read it. And individuals can develop testimony based on that conversation that would be more informed than it would have been without the conversation, but nobody's speaking in the name of the WRAC for the meeting on the August 31st and September 1st. And then subsequently, perhaps WRAC comments could be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors coming out of that same conversation.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like that we're maybe moving towards a committee, it's subcommittee, then we need to populate it. Tom, you had a comment?
Well, it's not out of order. I would make the motion in that read.
I think that's a fine recommendation. Excellent. So do we want to do two motions in terms of populating it, or should we go ahead and amend the motion to include who's going to be in it?
Second one.
Amend the motion. So
Yeah.
one motion and
Yeah.
populate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is interested in serving on the ad hoc committee, assuming it gets voted forward? We've got Ed, Jim, Eric,
I'm
David.
interested if I don't have to struggle with the buses to and from the South County.
David, Linda, and Laura Lee, thank you.
And my alternate, Dolores Howard.
Dolores, and then we also had Steph, I think,
I don't know
wanted
if
to.
we,
There's a
I
limit?
don't know if I can do public members in the meeting.
Oh, Lorelei, sorry. Are
I
you,
can't do that. I'm sorry.
do you become a member?
do you apply depending on the RAC rules? Afterwards, you can come talk to us.
Oh, I'd have to, okay. If we could do it, it would just become a Brown Act meeting.
Yeah, and I think it complicates the recommendations of an ad hoc RAC, so just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And
a good.
increases,
Yeah.
staff time.
Right. And it wouldn't be able to be a member in time to be on the ad hoc. So, so yeah, do we have that recorded?
The other condition of my interest in serving is that we agree not to comment as anything RAC related until RAC has had a chance to meet. So the conversation can inform individual comments on August 31st, September 1st. But none of us would presume to speak for the RAC. I would be very uncomfortable doing that without being able to come back to the whole RAC.
So would you be able to speak as the RAC Dana Reserve Review Committee, ad hoc committee? Is that reasonable? Is that helpful?
I would be uncomfortable with it, but others
Okay.
might be comfortable.
Other comments on that?
I think that we can always say, I'm serving today on the PTA and I'm on the executive committee for the Sierra Club and I'm on the RAC, but we don't speak for the RAC out of turn. Absolutely. Don't do that.
Right, I didn't know if you could speak for the subcommittee.
No,
Linda, how do you
don't
feel
speak
about that?
Out of school, you can introduce yourself as a member of anybody, anything you want, but you don't speak for them.
Until they've taken an action.
Okay, Linda, do you have a comment on that? Because I'm putting you as the convener.
Perspective, and it seemed to me that it would not be out of order to state that we are an ad hoc committee that hasn't as yet has not been able to do the presentation to the full RAC. That if there were things that came out of the committee that people wanted to use, that they would be able to say that this was part of the discovery through the ad hoc committee, and it has not been to date presented to RAC, so it doesn't carry forward. And that is
Right, because you are officially appointed. It's not self-appointed. Okay, Jim.
I just said, when the goal would be to come back with recommendation to the RAC. Assuming.
Yeah, it's just that the window of time, we don't have a RAC. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that at first it's not like we were going to try to reach a conclusion.
Oh.
Not only on Steve, that's one clarify. That's all.
I think there's kind of a range of visions of what this thing is. You're hearing multiple.
Okay, and
So they won't all be the
the
same.
second, just dealt with this at the city, it's difficult to say I am a city council person and then not be received to be speaking to the council. So personally, I wouldn't be saying I'm a member of the RAC, I'm speaking on this. Speaking. I don't think that unless you're just going to come out and say, I'm not, you gotta make it perfectly clear. You're not speaking.
Okay, final comment, and then we're going to
Yeah,
vote.
I would like to propose an amendment to the motion as well as a second. That the motion make clear that the ad hoc committee this summer will present their findings to the full WRAC at its September meeting. That's that. Then the comment is regarding what you said. We advise the Board of Supervisors. So what individuals want to say to the Planning Commission? Again, it's an individual comment, not a group comment.
I agree.
Okay, Ed, sorry, did you have a last?
Oh, I just want the members to understand when they're gonna review this, that the EIR is over 1,000 pages long. The MCSD's response to the EIR comments are over 100 pages long. I've emailed Brendan the NCSD response so he can distribute it to the committee. And it's up to anybody else to download the 1,000 pages if they want to read it.
That document has been.
A study session before they act.
Right, well,
That's
and
the water section that we're interested in.
and they did have a study session a year ago. It was like last August when they had a study session. David, I'm trying to close out the item. Is it critical?
Actually quite important.
Okay.
In the developer's statement, there's extremely long but detailed hydrologic reports. And Ed will correct me on this, but I believe the Pomo CSD has looked at it and said it is good, which implies a future will serve. So if that's
So that-
wrong, Ed, please correct me.
Well, and let's go ahead and if you have some comments, maybe make them directly to your ad hoc committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we're having a committee, it's
The
populated, we need to
NCSD
do the vote.
comments are in the information I sent you.
Yeah.
He can distribute it as he wishes.
So those comments are posted on this meeting page now and I can provide a direct link to the committee and I just want to make sure I have the right people.
Yep.
I have Ed,
Jim Guthrie.
Jim, Eric Green, David Shipping, Linda Shipping, Christine and Dolores.
No, not
Oh,
Christine,
just
Steph
Dolores.
Waldhead.
Just
Dolores is my
Dolores, her
alternate.
alternate.
She had asked me to
Okay.
convey to you that she wants to be on.
So that's 6. I should make sure I have that right.
And Steph Wald,
Oh.
she emailed us and said, hey, if that
I
committee
see that.
gets formed,
Okay.
can she be on it also?
Sure.
Would you read that list again?
We'll put it in the minutes.
Ed, Jim, Eric, David, Linda, Dolores, Steph.
And does the make of the motion and second accept my addition to the amendment to the motion?
I do.
I can't remember who the second was.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. All right, so that's the motion to form the committee, have a set reporting time and those members. Any more discussion before a vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. And Linda, you are convener, please. Okay, as always, we are trying to wrap up. We did have on the meeting to adjourn at 3:05. If you'll humor me if you have to go, you have to go. Otherwise, I would like to just quickly make sure that we get a moment to run through these final items. Ongoing updates, again, I'm just going to take them as a group. Does anybody have any comment on any of the reservoir, rain, groundwater, blah, blah, blah?
I had 2,500s of rain Tuesday night and Monday night and Tuesday morning.
Yeah, we had, and how about that thunder? Whew, that was amazing. All right, great.
I'm on the track for monitoring. We're adding 100 wells, we're already up 40 identified. We're gonna be doing, so we're gonna be offering equipment to put in people's wells, so sign an agreement. Wells, so we'll be over doubling the amount of monitoring over the past basin area. I'm at the beginning of the WRAC on the west fork. The water is still running in the crescent, so we're into the 6th month of that.
That big
stream
storm.
moving. So the water up there is good. The well report so far, a lot of them are 50 to 60 feet higher than they were last year.
Amazing.
So the recharge happened.
Yeah. Ta-da. Thank you. Any other comments on, that's item 8 for the agenda? Anything else there?
I do want to note for IRWM, the Integrated Regional Water Management Program, we were awarded the full grant that we had applied for January 31st. So we'll be moving ahead with the agreements for those projects.
Oh,
So no, we've
nice.
got it all listed in the updates.
Great. Thank you.
We jumped over groundwater basin management there. Can someone report on the outcome of the supervisor's decision on the status of the EPC and the groundwater sustainability agency?
So the Opamar,
Yeah.
I was there yesterday.
I was tuned in and out while I was in meetings, so
They voted to
right. You're in?
they voted to allow them to be part, but there's some issues with LAFCO because real fast, originally they were going to be part of it, then they didn't meet the deadline from the state, then they didn't meet their conditions with LAFCO, then the LAFCO conditions were changed. They had a 2-year date in February 19. They had new conditions to replace the conditions they didn't do. So now those are under question because those conditions said they couldn't be part of the memorandum of understanding or part of the thing. So as far as the vote yesterday, they voted 3-2 to put them on there. As far as LAFCO is concerned, don't know what's going to happen and don't know what happens with the DWR because that deadline was June 30th of 2017.
all right.
Andy, it's Patricia. May I add to that report?
Yeah, briefly, Patricia, go ahead.
Yesterday at the meeting, the county attorney confirmed that the EPCWD had met all the requirements, all the legal requirements necessary. So they did get to become now a GSA, and it's all open and above board, and hooray.
Taking comments. Great. David.
There's a rather fuzzy issue. There's a meeting tonight in Santa Margarita, I believe, in regard to Santa Margarita Ranch joining with the Santa Margarita CSD. And CSA in regard to water. And the issue apparently is that some deals were requiring that Nacimiento water be used as part of this deal and used for injection there. And I have heard people that has not happened. It would have been an interesting issue to look into. No, due to the summer hiatus, it was slight bias, but anyone knows about what's going on there, it'd be interesting.
Thank
And
you.
it will actually be it's going to be a LAFCO issue, I think, before it's resolved. And so we don't officially as a group influence LAFCO, but we can certainly keep an eye out for LAFCO agendas. But basically, this has to do with the cluster subdivision that was approved on the Santa Margarita Ranch with a whole lot of conditions of approval, some of which are being met, some of which are not, and some of which may be being sidestepped or whatever. And so there's a lot to pay attention to.
Okay, follow up with those guys if you have questions. Okay, so then in terms of future agenda items, we are, our next meeting will be September 6th. We're having a tentative agenda items are VAPO transportation that I think Blaine is maybe hoping we'll have Blaine do. We'll consider updates to the bylaws. Now we'll have the Dana Reserve ad hoc committee report and whatever else we come up with. Any other pressing agenda items that folks want to weigh in on? Just let us know. Finally, public comment.
One other EIR to watch for that has water implications is the Diablo decommissioning. It's kind of being overshadowed right now by the question of when the decommissioning will actually take place, because the EIR was commissioned at a time it was assumed the reactors would be shutting down in the next couple of years. And of course, now that's before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the State Water Resources Control Board. I won't go into all that, but there are definitely water implications to that. I'm not proposing that the WRAC dive into it as a body,
Okay.
but there's a lot of controversy over the desal efforts and a lot of other water-related issues that would be worth paying attention to, along with a lot of other issues in that decommissioning report. And I believe the Diablo Decommissioning Engagement Panel is planning a meeting a couple of weeks after that report comes out to kind of go over it and take public comment and interface with the public. And they plan to do it, well, if the report comes out as one of its members was expecting about at the end of this month, it might be about midway through July.
All right, so keep an eye on that. All right, public comment, any other public comments that are for items not on the agenda? Lorelei.
Hi, everybody.
And speak up a little because we have folks online.
My name is Laura Lee Waldorf, and I'm a resident citizen, and I'm a national facilitator, and water is the #1 thing we use for healing. So I'm a water geek at the same time because of it. Raise your hand if anyone has heard of primary water. So I'm here to start the conversation about discussion about primary water. Not right now, but just to be able to educate people a little bit, I'm going to let you know what primary water is 1 minute or less. There's primary water and there's secondary water. Secondary water is above the crust of the earth. And that's what we've been running on. That's what you guys are all talking about is secondary water, how to put it in reserves and make sure we all have water. Primary water is the water we're actually designed to consume and water our plants and animals and everything. It's pure. It comes from the mantle of the earth. It's below the crust of the earth. The crust of the earth is like Mount Everest upside down. So below the crust of the earth is a mantle that starts with gaseous gas and vapor, and then turns into hydrogen and oxygen, and then turns into steam, and then pushes up towards the surface of the earth automatically because water always finds a way, and pressure from the heat pushes it upward. So it's all sitting there for us to tap into. And the acreage that comes out of the acre feet that comes out of the water lets you tap into the veins, because what it is, not going into a well or anything, you're going into water that's moving and coming out. So there's veins that come up, and the mountains usually is where you find this water, but you can find it anywhere. And the veins come up and they crisscross, and you just have to hit a vein, and all of a sudden you have all this acreage of water that's fresh and pure. Now, some of it might have picked up some minerals, but it can be tested and handled, demineralized or whatever, but usually it's spring water is what we call it. But what it is we're sitting on the water. We're really supposed to be consuming water from underneath our feet. And when we do, it's free. We don't have to store it. We don't have to chemicalize it. We don't have to do anything. No one can control us over our water. We just have to be able to go down. Now the water is ready to be released. So it's going to happen. So I'm just doing a grassroots thing. I'm going around the counties in California and then Colorado to meetings that I can, because I'm a water geek and so are you guys. And you're sweet and intelligent people. And we can get this in a direction where we are naturally, because I'm a natural person, are designed to be, because we're struggling with water. We live on a Garden of Eden. The reason why we don't have Eden going on is because we're depending on secondary water, which is the natural way nature cleans water. We don't want to be doing secondary water.
So we have just wrap up.
So if you want more information on this at all, if you want to start a discussion, primarywatertechnologies.com. It's basically dozers with data. And call John Martinez at 805-748-8168. And we can set up a meeting or some kind of discussion group or just one-on-one or whatever. And or email Freedom Waters, that's plural, at protonmail.com. So thank you for your time and everything, but this is a paradigm because for 500 years we've been told secondary water is the only thing, so we have to fix it in our brain in a different way. So thank you so
very
much.
Appreciate that.
For your time and everything, and I'll be back and hopefully we'll be able to have further discussion.
Great, thank you so much. Any other public comments for items not on the agenda? All right, with that, meeting adjourned until September 6th, 2023, 1:30 here in the library community room. Thanks, everyone.